Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. So listen, I'm going to the Olive Garden to meet my friends. Will you be okay? Before heading out, I wanted to make sure my children would be fine on their own for the day, so I asked my 15-year-old son who was busy online gaming. When he didn't give me any response, I nudged him a little to gain his attention, and succeeded. "Mom, I'm in a match right now, can't talk." He looked at me in annoyance, removed his headphones, and said in an irritated voice, "Fine, I was just trying to tell you that I'm going out." I crossed my arms and informed him as I had now gained access to his attention. "Yep, sure, go ahead," he replied and turned back to play his game, but he was half focused on the game and half on me. "Now don't keep playing games all day, young man. Food is in the fridge. Make sure to eat it." I nudged him once again to remind him of his meal. "Okay, Mom, I will. Now go. Bye." He put them back after saying that. I'm telling you, kids these days, they have no regard to the surroundings and elders. I blame gaming and the internet. The internet is the source of all evil, and I'd been saying this to my son for years now, but the idiot never listens to me. Furthermore, I already had my talk with Sophie, who is the eldest, and rather easiest to get to listen than Jack, who was always in front of a screen, whether it was a PC or mobile game. After instructing her about eating, where the emergency numbers were, and if she needed anything she could call me immediately, I finally headed to meet my friends. So the Olive Garden was a place for housewives like me to relax and have a little chit-chat with one another. They had everything: a pool, spa, a bar for those who needed a drink, golf course, and archery for the athletic ladies, and a little private area for a little ladies' picnic for those who wanted to have a longer conversation. Those gossiping types. Me and a few other women around the neighborhood used to meet every Tuesday to converse about the ups and downs of their lives and to complain about their children's behavior. In exchange, we used to give each other pieces of advice on where we should make corrections to solve whatever problem we were facing at the moment. It was kind of a therapy for women such as me, and we enjoyed our little private sessions. I drove to the garden, and as I walked inside the lobby, I found others waiting for me. A smile formed on my lips as I waved at them. Meeting good friends is rare, and after meeting these three, I kept thinking the same as over time, the four of us had become best friends. We decided to have a spa session today, since such an opportunity for us was as rare as hen's teeth, as we had planned to spend a few hours here after a long time. While enjoying the spa, Susan started telling me how she was worried about her 11-year-old son, Milo, saying he was always playing this online game PUBG, and often talked about how he wished he could kill people in real life just like the game. He kept talking about how cool it was that he could use weapons and whatnot in the game, and she was worried that the game was taking a toll on him psychologically. The other two also shared their concerns over their son's obsession with the online game, saying they are behaving like brats and keep skipping their meals because of PUBG. Come on girls, they're kids, and it's just a game. What harm can it do? My son also plays games right after coming home from school, but I never let him skip his meals, and nor does it affect his mental health. Don't worry, we have all been through this as a kid. Remember how we used to spend all our savings in the arcade? It's just a phase, and it'll pass. I tried to assure them, but deep down, I was also worried about my son and his gaming habits. After spending a good 3 hours with them, we decided to head home together since we all lived around the block. When I got back, I found Sophie sitting in the living room couch watching TV, and Jack was probably in his room playing games. I went directly to the kitchen and opened the fridge, only to find the mashed potatoes, vegetable salad, and tortillas still untouched. "Sophie, did you guys not eat yet?" I raised my voice in anger because I had spent 2 hours making them. "I didn't feel like eating potatoes, Mom, so I made myself a sandwich, and as proof, you can check the bread." Not sure about Jack though, I didn't see him come out of his room yet. As she told me, I stomped upstairs to my dear son's room, and just as I expected, I found his head still buried in that damn PC playing that game. "Tell me, how long are you going to keep this up?" As I removed his headphones, he looked at me startled. He was about to say something in anger, but as he noticed my mood, his expression changed. "Did you not leave for the Olive Garden yet?" The moment he said those words, I could tell by his expression that he had sensed my anger rising. It's past 6 p.m. Turn that damn thing off right now. Enough gaming for today. I want you downstairs in 10 minutes if you don't want to lose your access to the computer." I stormed out after saying that. One thing about my children is that they never spoke out of turn when I was angry and obeyed my commands since they knew I spoiled them when needed as well. And just as expected, he did come down within the given time. I served him food which he silently ate without any argument or question, nor did I ask any. Their father returned from work around 9:30 p.m., and just as usual, the dinner was served right after then. They all had a little dinner talk when Aiden asked them about school and homework, etc. Sophie and Jack had a little sibling teasing and quarreling as they were in charge of doing the dishes while I threw a warm bath for their father. As per our daily routine, we all went to bed on time to sleep. The next morning, I woke up early as usual to prepare breakfast for everyone before waking them up to get ready. Once done prepping breakfast, I went to wake Aiden up, whom I found already awake and in the bathroom getting ready for the office. So I proceeded to Jack's room since he was the one who used to sleep till late. As I was waking him up, I heard the doorbell, so I went to open the door. And when I did, I found 2 cops at our door. "Good morning. How can I help you?" I asked. "We are here to ask a few questions regarding Susan White. I heard you're friends with her." I looked at them in confusion as they asked, so I closed the door and walked outside to talk more comfortably. "Yes, we meet at the Olive Garden every Tuesday. Is she in some kind of trouble? If she is, I assure you she's a very kind young lady." I didn't know what she did, but I wanted to do my part as her friend. "Ma'am, unfortunately, I have bad news for you. She, including her entire family, was found dead this morning. Only her son Milo was found alive. We believe it's a murder, but we haven't found the murder weapon yet." As I heard this, the color on my face washed out. What were they talking about? The entire family was murdered, but she was just fine the other day. The terrifying news of Susan's death came as a shocker to me, as I believed others must have been in the same state as me after hearing this. "You mentioned meeting at the Olive Garden. Did she come by yesterday as well?" one of the officers asked. "Yes, she did, and we had quite the conversation with her," I told them. The news of her death was still hard to swallow, but I was trying to keep my composure. "Did she seem troubled by any chance? Was there any mention of someone threatening her or her family?" I couldn't remember her even mentioning any sort of trouble, so I answered what I knew to this question. "No, she seemed fine. The only trouble she shared was about her concern over Milo's psychological health." "Milo's psychological health?" The other officer, who had been writing something on a notepad, suddenly lifted his head and asked with a weird expression. "Yes, her son was obsessed over an online game, and she mentioned how his behaviors were changing due to that. I suggested it was just a game and he'll get over it with time," I told them honestly. "Who else heard this conversation?" he asked again. Penelope and Hazel were there too, as they also shared similar concerns about their sons. After listening to this, the officer headed over to Penelope's house, and the other officer thanked me for my time and followed him. I couldn't understand what was going on, and who would do something so terrible to such a sweet family. When I entered the house, everyone seemed to be awake. By the looks of it, they heard the conversation I just had with the officers. They didn't mention a word and simply finished their breakfast, and since Aiden's lunch was already packed, he grabbed it, kissed me, and headed to his work. The other 2 also got ready obediently and headed for school on their own. After everyone was gone, I decided to meet up with the other 2 and ask what was going on. But while talking, it turned out none of us had any idea what went overnight for such a tragedy to befall. We were worried about young Milo, but as he was sent to his aunt's house, we couldn't do anything to provide a helping hand. Losing a neighbor is the worst feeling, but losing an entire neighboring family was on another level. As Susan's neighbors and friends, we held a ceremony at church for them and cried our hearts out while the 3 of us were alone. Our lives didn't stop, and as we were moving on with heavy hearts, one day I saw one of the news channels showing how an 11-year-old killed his entire family under the influence of PUBG. The moment they revealed the names of the victims and the boy, my entire body froze in shock and my face went pale. After a few minutes, I turned around. I saw Jack standing there with the same expression as me. He stopped playing games after that, and I stopped nagging him. But whenever I think about Susan, I'm filled with a sense of guilt. I shouldn't have said that it was just a game. Instead, I should have suggested immediate therapy for the boy. It was the second week of April, and the workload for this month was more than we have on a normal basis. The frustration of each employee was at its peak since we weren't getting a single day off, not even on weekends, and we were working like madmen till late evening. Shit, my head is throbbing. I can't handle another week worth of work without proper rest, Zoe said, leaning back in her chair, making crack noises from her stiff neck, which was the result of working nonstop for 8 hours straight. Me too. He doesn't even let us take a break to relax. I feel like I'm gonna go mad if this keeps going on, Jake said, removing his fingers from the keyboard and showing us how sore they had gotten by now. I don't know about any of you, but I, for one, am going to take a week off the moment this project is over, I said, stretching my arms. The reason we were even able to chat with each other like this was that Mr. Curtis had been called into the boardroom for an urgent meeting. Otherwise, he'd be on our neck by now. Yeah, sure, why not? He would be ready to offer you those leaves the moment you walk into his office. Zoe's voice was filled with sarcasm. Why won't he? I have a month's worth of due paid leaves, and I can take them whenever I want, I said, furrowing my eyebrow as I looked at her. Let's just say he does grant you those leaves. What are you going to do next? She asked. I don't know, maybe go to Las Vegas on a trip or something, I said, crossing my arms behind my head and leaning on my chair. I also have 10 paid leaves that I haven't taken yet. How about I come with you? Zoe looked at Jake in frustration as he suggested that. Hey guys, the boss is on his way. Get back to work, Pedro announced as he rushed back inside, and after showing Jake a thumbs up, I buried my head in work again. This week went just as busy as the previous one, but we were finally able to finish the project before the 15th of the month. So as planned, I submitted my application for leave, hoping to get the approval. I was ready to throw a nice argument if he had shown any signs of resistance towards those paid leaves, but to my surprise, he signed it without saying a word of disagreement. I exited his office proudly, showing them the approved leave application. Zoe's shocked expression was far more than amusing that I couldn't help but rub it in her face. After submitting it to HR, I got back and announced, "Tonight's dinner's on me, guys." I looked at her while forming a charming smirk across my lips, which was mocking her, and I was enjoying that. I planned an urgent trip to Vegas the following day, and since Jake wasn't able to get Mr. Curtis's approval for the leaves, I went there alone. The very next day I took my car, which had been in my garage for a long time, cleaned it up a bit, and then loaded my stuff in there. When I was done with my shower, I got ready and headed outside. After locking the door behind me, I went to the garage and started my drive for my 3-night trip. I played Ed Sheeran's song "I Don't Care" and started singing along as I drove to my destination. Being in such a good and refreshing mood after so long because of not having to work and stress all day, I didn't even notice a black SUV tailing me after entering the border of Nevada until I looked in the back mirror when I heard some idiot blowing his horn behind me. I thought it must just be a coincidence that the car took 2 in the same turns as me, but when it happened for the 3rd time as well, I couldn't help but notice the small details about how it was maintaining the same distance the entire time, as if trying not to get noticed by me. Now, remember one thing. When in panic mode, never make the mistake of turning to the secluded areas to distract those tailing, the same mistake I had just done. It was as if the driver of the SUV was waiting for just that, when he suddenly sped up his car and matched it to the speed of mine. I don't know what other mistake led to this, but somehow they managed to push me into a corner and block the way, preventing me from turning my car around anywhere. There was only an alley on the other end, but there was zero possibility of a car passing through that. 4 giant men came out of the SUV. They all had tattoos all over their bodies, and one of them even had a piercing on him. With guns in their hands, they walked to my car's window and asked me to pull the mirror down if I don't want to get shot. I was scared out of my mind, so I did as they said and pulled the mirror down. "Give us whatever you have," one of the men said, the most intimidating voice I'd ever heard, as I leaned over the window and put the gun over my head. With my quivering hands, I handed them my wallet, which had everything, cash, cards, etc. But when they looked at each other, gave the most devilish and frightening smile, and the man with the piercing said, "He said everything, dude. Leave everything in the car and get the hell out." His heavy voice was threatening, and by this point, the amount of fear I was feeling was no joke. So I hesitantly, along with my shaking legs, got out of the car with the keys still in there. I wasn't going to be surprised if I wet my pants by now, but luckily I didn't. I looked toward the small alley, gathering whatever courage I had left. I ran in there. What was even more humiliating than losing everything in a strange city was the laugh they gave me when I ran. It was as if they were finding my escape comical after robbing me. The only thing they didn't take from me was my phone and a few dollars change that were in my pocket, but I was so unfortunate that there was no network for my phone and I had no idea where I was. In my failed attempts to escape from them, I had driven to wherever without thinking twice, and now I was regretting it. With absolutely no money and no means to contact anyone without even the useless junk of a phone, I decided to walk back to Hanford. This was by every means the worst trip of my entire life, and with regret written all over my face, I was thinking it would have been better if I just worked like everyone else. Now my leaves were ruined along with everything. I bought water from a store near a gas station with the little money I had, but when I asked them if I could use their phone, the old lady at the store started screaming at me, saying I would run off with it. This day just couldn't get worse, and it was finally getting dark. I had no idea where to sleep, so I simply spent it on a bench near the gas station. At this point, I wanted to cry so hard about whatever misfortunes were befalling me, but I gulped them down and tried sleeping on that uncomfortable hard bench. I couldn't understand why my phone was having no reception when it was working just fine before I got robbed, so I kept checking it from time to see if the reception's back. Thankfully, I had charged it fully, so I still had 80% battery remaining. All I had to do now was not let it go to waste until the reception gets back and I call someone to pick me up. The next morning, as I'm walking with weak legs, I saw a truck and decided to hitchhike. I was lucky enough that the driver let me on. He was going to Barstow, and he said he'd drop me there. After 5 hours of driving, he dropped me somewhere in Barstow. I had no idea where it was, but I still thanked him for helping me. I went around to ask locals about the direction toward Hanford, but none of them knew about it, so I figured the area he had dropped me in was an urban one. The people seemed nice. They asked me if they could provide any help. Even though I was hesitant, I told them I was hungry and hadn't eaten for 2 days, and they were kind enough to offer me some bread and warm soup, which felt like the tastiest food I'd ever gotten. After I was done with my food, they sent a teenage kid to show me the highway. And as I was walking there, I noticed the reception on my phone was back. So without missing a second, I dialed Jake's number. He picked up after the 4th ring. "Marcus, you pig, you're enjoying Vegas, aren't you? By the way, your sister Rebecca called saying she wasn't able to get in touch with you. Since you didn't tell her about your little trip, I didn't either, so better call her and come up with an excuse because she genuinely sounded worried about you." He continued babbling without giving me a chance to say a word. "Listen, Jake, I'm lost." There was a pause for a moment after I said that, but then it was as if he realized something and said, "I know what you're doing. You're going to say everyone gets lost in Vegas." "No, I'm not in Vegas. I'm in Barstow." My voice was filled with frustration. "You have no shame, Marcus." He thought I was mocking him. "I'm not joking. I'm lost, damn it, Jake." He disconnected the call before I could finish it, so I dialed again, and he didn't pick up, so I had no other choice but to call Zoe. "Listen, Zoe, I need your help. I got robbed, and I'm in Barstow right now. Please send someone to pick me up. I'm miserable here," I said in a single breath before she could say anything. "Okay, send me your live location. I'll head over to you." She sighed and said in a calm voice, "Thanks, and one more thing. Be careful of a black SUV," I warned her.
Not an idiot like you, I'll be fine." She disconnected the call after saying that. Waiting for 7 hours after sharing my location, I finally spotted her car stopping in front of me. I rushed to her with tears in my eyes and thanked her for coming to my rescue. After that, I got in, and when I told her I hadn't slept properly in more than 2 days, she drove to a hotel instead of heading home. I looked at her in confusion when she stopped the car in front of its gates. "I'm also tired after that driving, and you need to clean up. You look like a homeless person," she said while pointing a finger at me. As I was walking with her inside, I couldn't help but feel thankful for having someone like her beside me.
It was about when I was returning from my grandmother's place in Montana to catch my flight back home. I had taken a cab, and since it was an hour's ride to the airport, I decided to play a game of PUBG Mobile. So I took out my phone, connected my headphones, and started playing. I teamed up with 3 random players, and we decided to play a classic game on the map of Erangel. After the timer went off, we noticed the circle was around Lipovka and Mansion, covering the area of Novorepnoye. So we figured it would be closing around Milta Power, and decided to hide near the bridge that crossed a farm in Milta to kill other passing players. We couldn't land as planned, since 2 of the players went immediately to loot the surrounding area of the farm. So I, along with another player, went to loot houses as well. I found an M416 almost immediately, and around 60 5.56mm ammo. There was another shotgun and a P92 pistol. After going through a few more houses, I found a med kit, a few bandages, 2 energy drinks, and a syringe. As we were doing that, I noticed a few footsteps on the map, so all of us rushed immediately toward our enemies and started killing them one by one. I got 2 kills, and the rest of them were killed by other players. After getting all the supplies we needed, we proceeded with our plan the moment the circle started closing. We hid near the bridge and started killing the players who were trying to cross it. Within a few minutes, I received 7 kills. But since we couldn't stay there any longer as the blue zone approached, we took a car and headed toward prison. We got a few good kills around the border of prison and Milta Power, and just as expected, the circle did close between Milta and Milta Power. In the end, our team came second since there was another team who was out to kill. I had achieved 14 kills and MVP in our team. The team I was playing with was pretty good. That was the very reason I got too invested in the game and didn't realize how much time went by on the ride. As we were moving forward in the arena in the next game, my teammates were roasting other players while killing them. It was fun, even though I had my mic turned off. While playing my 4th game, I got distracted by the car moving over a speed breaker, almost making me drop the phone, which made me realize I was still inside the cab. I looked outside to see we were heading toward a narrow road with bends and turns, which was confusing because it was different from what the cab driver took the other day when I arrived here. So to clear my suspicions, I asked the driver where we were headed, but surprisingly, he didn't give me any response. I tried asking for a few more times and he just stayed silent. It seemed that it had been a while since the hour passed, and there was no way this guy was driving toward the airport. I closed my phone and put it back in my pocket, as there was no way I would be able to focus on the game any longer. The only question in my mind was at the time, where's he taking me, and why? My voice was stuck in my throat as I just stood there frozen, waiting for whatever destination we were about to arrive, so that I could run off at the first chance I get. I did try to open the door, but he was already clever enough to lock all of them, making it impossible to open without his permission. 15 more minutes passed, and finally he stopped the car in a remote area near a river. By the looks of it, there was no one around. At least that's what I thought, until 2 huge-looking me came and dragged me out of the car. If it was some movie, I would have heroically taken them down and escaped this terrifying situation. But this was no movie, and I was not a male lead in this situation. So when I tried to run, I was beaten brutally in the gut. None of them said a word while reshaping my face with their punches and kicks, nor did they hear any of my pleas. It almost made me believe that these people were mute and deaf, and of course, without an ounce of humanity as that matter. The driver just stood there keeping watch while the 2 goons beat me to the point where I started to lose consciousness. Trust me, I knew who might have been behind this, but I never expected them to go this far as to try and murder me. My hands and legs were broken to the point where I kept passing out as they continuously thrashed me. As they were done using their bodies to pummel me mercilessly, one of them took out a knife and stabbed my lower abdomen. But as he was pulling it out, it just got stuck there, and he wasn't able to do that. My senses were drifting away when I felt them dragging my body to the river and throwing me in it. And along with the water entering my system, everything went dark. I was sure that I was going to die at this point, but unfortunately my suffering wasn't meant to end there, and I was woken up at a hospital. My life would have come to an end if it wasn't for a local fisherman to witness everything and rescue me after waiting patiently for my attackers to leave. After being in a state of coma for almost 3 months, I was awakened miraculously as my wounds healed. I used the word miracle because I heard doctors didn't believe I would be able to make it, and they thought I would die. Grandma insisted on letting me live on life support, and I guess I should thank her for my sound recovery. Now, about the part where I was almost murdered, I believe it was my Uncle Sam's doing, since my sole reason for that visit was because Grandma summoned me to inform me that she had put my name as an heir on the will. Since Uncle Sam was my father's only brother, and we all knew the fact that he had been eyeing Grandma's properties for years, he opposed it strongly. But since I was the only offspring of the family, my name was put there regardless of what others said. The very next day they attempted to kill me, so it was pretty clear to me who would have been behind it. I guess Grandma guessed the same while I was in a vegetative state, and with that fisherman being the witness, she gave Uncle's name as a possible suspect to the police. The cab driver was found murdered a few days after I was admitted to the hospital, and the 2 men were caught while trying to flee, but both of them refused to open their mouths against who was behind the murder. As those 2 didn't testify against Uncle, he was removed from the suspect list due to lack of evidence, but Grandma did add a precautionary measure to the will. The new clause that had been added was, upon her death, the properties would be transferred immediately to me, but in case something were to happen to me, then in that case, it will belong to the charity and will go to the state's orphanage. I did not want to become a part of this family feud, but now that I have, and in the hospital at that, I was not going to let this slide. The day I recover and get out of this hospital, I will make sure to dig up every dirt on Uncle and send him where he belongs.
There were Naomi, Evelyn, Lillian, and me in our group. I wouldn't call it a group, but more like a gang or something all, because of this Lillian. She used to call herself the group leader, and a weird thing that whoever wants to join our group needs to give us permission to have a sleepover at their house. Well, of course, no one except for Lillian thought of her as a leader, but we kept our mouths shut about it, because if thinking of herself as a leader made her happy, then so be it. One day when we were all hanging around the cafeteria, she walked in with a girl who had transferred to her school 1 day ago, and then told us that she'd be joining our group. So there's a sleepover party at our house this weekend. But Lillian, she had just transferred, and we know nothing about her. Evelyn and I dragged her into a corner and whispered into her ear, "You don't know her, but I do. And if the leader is saying that she would be joining our group, then she will." After saying that, she walked to the new girl, which pissed us off. I mean, come on, we don't even know her name. Naomi asked by signaling through her eyes about what happened, and we just shook our heads no. In response, she sighed loudly, which made the new girl turn her head towards us, and I could tell that she just glared at us. Lillian told us that she was going to show her around the campus and left. The moment they were gone, Naomi broke her silence. I swear Lillian pisses me off sometimes. Why can't we just tell her that she isn't our leader? It's because the illusion of her being a leader makes her happy. And you know what she's going through with her parents always arguing because of her brother's death, Evelyn said while sitting down beside Naomi. And she sighed in defeat. How about we give this new girl a chance? We don't have to be friends with her. We can do this only for Lillian. I suggested it, and the 2 of them agreed. We decided to go shopping after class, but Lillian said that she was busy showing around the town to the new girl. I mean, seriously. Either she did not know her name either, or she just wasn't telling it to us on purpose, just so that we would ask her, but we did not. As we were shopping in the area, we decided to rest for a bit and went over to a coffee shop that was there when we saw Lillian sitting down, enjoying a conversation with that girl. Even though she had already told us about hanging out with her, we still felt a bit betrayed. I mean, how couldn't we? The four of us had been friends since elementary school. Even our parents were friends with each other. So we just walked out of the coffee shop and went to some other one. The next day was the weekend, not to mention the sleepover at the new girls' house, which Lillian did not let us forget about through her constant calls and messages as reminders. And she took permission from our parents as well. Anyway, the three of us met at Lillian's house and then headed over for the new girls' house. And then that was when Naomi asked, "So, are you ever going to tell us the name of this girl? Or is this information just too secretive for you to share?" I don't know if it was the way she asked or just her tone, but the two of us found it funny and then tried controlling our laughter. "Oh, sorry, I guess I forgot. Her name is Leia," she told us while driving her car. After a while, we reached Leia's house and she was waiting outside for us. As soon as she saw Lillian stepping out of the car, she rushed towards her and hugged her. Unbelievable. Evelyn whispered to us strangely, and Leia heard, and then gave us the same glare that she did in the cafeteria. I whispered to them, saying that it was okay and just letting them be for the night. We went in the house and Lillian and Leia kept talking with each other. Leia did not even have the courtesy to say welcome to us, let alone talk. We were led to the living room along with Lillian and sat down on the couch, and that was when Lillian asked Leia about the washroom and left. After she gave her the direction, she turned to us and said, "I don't like either of you." Leia broke the silence after 5 minutes of Lillian going to the bathroom. "What did you just say?" I asked with a shocked and confused expression wearing on my face. "You heard what I said. And you should get away from Lillian, otherwise you will face the same consequences as the girls I hated in my previous school." She sounded proud while saying that. "What the hell are you saying, bitch?" Naomi was already pissed from earlier, so she just burst into anger. I love Lillian, and I would hate for her to mourn the deaths of her three best friends. Well, maybe she won't even know that you guys are dead because your body parts will be reformed and used as decor in my home. She said this in a calm voice while pointing at her decors. We looked around to see a skull lamp and a heart vase that looked like it was made of a real heart, but it was hard to tell if it was real or just ceramic. Dozens of doctors looked like actual body parts, and they made us tremble. We felt a chill going down our spines. She started laughing at our expression, finding it amusing, and that was when Lillian came back. "It's good to see that you guys are getting along," she said while smiling at us. The entire night we were on the edge, thinking that she might do something to us. Lillian was just enjoying herself, playing games, laughing, and watching movies. But I could not help but notice her being at the edge as well for some reason. None of us slept the entire night and continued playing games, singing, etc., as Lillian commanded. The next morning, as we were coming back, Lillian was unusually quiet while driving us there. So I asked her if she was okay, but she still did not say a word, and so we got worried about her. As we were stepping out of the car, she said, "I'm sorry guys, I shouldn't have dragged you into this." I heard her last night, and it was fine until she was only blackmailing me. But I don't think that I can take it if you guys are involved too. She started crying after this. We sat back in the car and tried to calm her down while asking her to tell us everything. She told me that one late night, she was passing through the same house when she saw Leia dragging a dead body of a girl. At the time, she quickly went to her home all scared, but the next day Leia came to her school and whispered in her ears, "You better be ready, my friend, if you don't want to end up like the girl you saw last night."
Have you heard about the haunted stories of the tunnels of Sand Hill Road? Well, if you haven't, then better brace yourselves because that's exactly what I'm about to tell you, since this experience of mine is not pleasant on the ears. It was one night when I was driving through Charleston Street along with my buddy Ronald. We were quite drunk as we had just gotten out of a nightclub after enjoying ourselves for hours, and now we're headed to the hotel we were staying at. I don't know if it was because we were too drunk to have a hallucination or if it was real, but I swear I saw a white blur passing through our car. And just after that, it suddenly shut off at the very spot, and no matter how much longer I tried to start the car again, it didn't seem to work. Ron, hey, dude, wake up. The car's dead. You need to help me check the problem. I shook passed out Ronald, but he didn't budge. So I opened a bottle of water and threw it on him, causing him to wake up groaning. He was still in the same drunken state, so I had to push him out of the car and forcefully make him stand with a flashlight while I checked the issue. Weirdly, everything seemed fine, and even the fuel was full, so I couldn't understand what caused it to suddenly stop working like that. Luke, I don't feel so good. So I'm just gonna go back to the car and sleeping. You take care of this. I turned back to see him walking back to the car door, stumbling after saying that. After waiting there on the lookout for about 20 minutes to get help from any passing by vehicle, I couldn't believe not even a single one had passed by. So I tried to contact Jess back at the hotel to ask him to send some mechanic or help, but he didn't pick up. And looking at how it was 1 in the morning, I wasn't surprised either. I went back to the car after waiting for a few more minutes and leaning my head back on the driving seat. Ronald had already been fast asleep by now, and as peacefully as he was sleeping, one could even say that he had not a care in the world. There was nothing I could do at this hour except wait for morning to be able to find some help, so I closed my eyes to sleep it off. But for some strange reason, the only thing I got was an uneasy feeling in my chest that was getting stronger by the minute. So I opened my eyes and drank a few sips of water. I don't know if it was the effects of being out in the middle of nowhere or if it was the time of night that was the cause, but all of a sudden, the surrounding area started giving off hair-raising vibes. I don't know if it was my brain playing tricks on me, but the distance between the tunnels that were pretty far earlier in the car started to feel close. I clenched my eyes, rubbing them and opening them again, and this time it was back to normal. I thought maybe I was having hallucinations because of the time and the effects of alcohol still being present in my system. Still, shaking this feeling of fear I was experiencing felt like a daunting task, so I decided to give a few more shots at starting the car. On the first try, the car didn't give a response. On the second try, still the same and the car didn't start. On the third try, I was thinking if it won't start this time, I won't try any longer. And just as I thought it did, not this time either. I wasn't going to give it any more tries, but it's good that I did because the car started smoothly as if it was never dead in the first place. For some reason, driving at the minimal speed felt right. And as I was getting closer to the tunnel, the spine-tingling feeling just kept growing stronger and stronger. It was as if the tunnel was giving off a warning, I dare you to cross me. But I was scared that if I stopped the car now, it won't start, so I kept going forward. Even then, I didn't dare to speed up, because that eerie feeling was too much for me to handle. It was weird that I took this turn when we were getting back from the nightclub, because earlier we came from a different route than this one. As my attention was focused on the tunnel, the white blur went across the car again, and instead of stopping, its radio suddenly turned on with nothing but static noise coming from it, which made me shake in my boots with terror. It was still surprising to see that even such loud and disturbing noises weren't enough to wake Ronald from his sleep. Since the tunnel was only 3 feet, there was no possibility of driving through, nor was I planning to. But still, driving anywhere near the area was frightening as well. That was when the radio stopped, and I saw a white figure, which was possibly a woman, appear on the edge of the tunnel. It was as if my breath got stuck in my throat, and I felt two eerie eyes glowing, staring right at me. Nothing more of a red flag than this one was enough for me to turn the car around, so I acted on the speed of the flash and drove as far away as possible. I did look at the back mirror once, but I couldn't see that woman again as she had disappeared. When I was sure that I had gotten to a safe distance from that place, I took out my phone and opened the navigation app. I looked for a route that was safe for me to drive without any more spook for the night. Thankfully, I reached the hotel safe and sound at night, but by the time I did, it was already 4 a.m. After a handful of struggles, I was finally able to wake up Ronald and then drag him to his hotel room. All the tiredness and sleep was finally catching up to me, so I fell asleep the moment I lay on my bed. The next morning, I told my friends about whatever happened to me, but they laughed it off, saying that it must have been a drunken hallucination. I swear that Ronald seemed like a thorn at this point, since he did nothing to help me last night besides sleeping like a log. I didn't remember what tunnel it was, so I searched on Google for answers. But when I found out it was not just me who had experience like that, there were many reported sightings of that woman, along with paranormal activities that happened there at night. I came across many articles that claimed a rumor about a deceased couple who haunted those underground tunnels. There had been many sights of an old woman who appeared whenever a car enters those streets. Doesn't matter if these two idiots didn't believe me. I was feeling lucky that the problem in our car disappeared and I was able to leave when I did. Otherwise, God knows what might have happened. And who knows if this moron who is laughing like a hyena right now would have been alive or dead.
The incident I'm about to tell you still haunts me to this day. It happened to me when I was still in high school. A new game was in the craze at the time, Dragon Age Inquisition. It was a 4-player life simulation game. In that game, the player had to take on the role of one of the 4 Inquisition. They were dispatched to eliminate either a cohort of Venatori, a battalion of Red Templars, a swarm of Darkspawn, a pack of demons, or a Katam and Kanari that had taken control of an area. Every location had 5 zones, and once the players completed the first 4 zones, the agents had to face enemies led by the enemy commander, either Calpurnia, Samson, or Emissary Alpha, an Envy Demon, or Sereth, depending on which faction they are fighting. Once the final wave of enemies was killed, the match ends victoriously. I was obsessed with that game, and often used to go to the nearby gaming cafe to play it. I used to play this game for hours, and after I was finished playing, I used to open my Facebook account and post my progress of it. I often played with different players, but there was one guy with the name of Hunter Z309 whom I played most of my games with. We even used to talk using Dialogue Wheel. One day after the game, I logged into Facebook and uploaded my progress post. After that, I clicked the messages of others and went to check notifications. Someone had tagged me in a post, and the person who tagged me was unknown to me. So I checked the post, and there was a picture of me sitting in the cafe playing Dragon Age. The picture was taken 2 days ago. I recognized the outfit from that day. I looked around. Everyone was busy on their own. Surprisingly, he was in my friends list, and I had no idea when I added him. I did not think much of it at the time, but slowly it started to increase. I was tagged in more pictures of me. I had no idea who it was and when did he take my picture. I messaged him, saying it's rude to take pictures of others and upload it without permission. He instantly replied, "I'm sorry, I'll take it down." And after that, all the posts with my pictures were deleted from his account. I was relieved, but I was still not sure about him taking my pictures again. I messaged him saying not to do this anymore, but I should have been a little more specific about it. The next day, when after playing game, I checked my Facebook. The pictures were sent into my inbox and they were from the same day. I looked around and shouted, "Who is it?" Everyone started looking at me with confusion, so I couldn't recognize who it was. I texted him to stop it, but there was no reply. The pictures kept increasing day by day.
so I complained about it to the cafe owner. But even after that, it did not stop. And along with the pictures of me being in the cafe, other pictures that were downloaded from my Facebook and were edited in nude models' bodies started to come. I was extremely worried about it and had no idea what to do. I thought of telling my parents about it, but since I used to come here by the excuse of going to the library, I was really scared, so I stopped going to the cafe. But it still did not stop. He started sending threat messages to me, along with the pictures of new models with my face edited on it. One day, he sent me a picture of a nude model in a weird pose and asked me to send him my picture in that pose. I immediately blocked him and deactivated my Facebook account. I locked myself inside my room and stopped going anywhere. My parents started to worry about me and started to ask questions. I had no courage to tell them about it after lying to them so much. I was depressed. After a few days, one of my friends sent me a picture that was going viral and told me that it was my picture. I checked and it was the same picture with that nude model in that pose, but with my face edited to it. I immediately told her about everything. She said I should tell my parents about it before they find such pictures from somewhere else and report this. I stomped back and forth in my room, arguing subconsciously to myself if I should tell them or not. What if they start to yell? What if they don't even talk to me anymore? What if they kick me out of the house? And what if they don't want me anymore? All what-if questions were roaming around in my mind. Somehow, I managed to gather enough courage to tell them about it and come clean. When we were all having dinner, I approached them, saying, "I need to tell you guys something." Their focus went toward me, and I started to tell them everything. I told them about how I used to go play games and not library and how I ended up with a cyber stalker. I thought that they would be disappointed in me, but that wasn't the case. They looked at me with a concerned look, and my mother spoke. "We know, honey, about you going to the cafe. We let you be because we know you study hard." My parents told me not to worry and they will take care of it. They went there and reported it to the cyber police department. The investigation started and they tracked the source of the post and messages. It turned out to be the cafe owner's son, and he was also the one who used to play with me online. All the posts that were uploaded by him, along with the viral ones, were completely taken down from the internet. I was relieved. But the next day when I went to school, I felt like everyone was staring at me and gossiping about me. Everyone was talking about what happened to me. My friends started to avoid me. But still, somehow I managed to finish my school and started preparing for college. Even to this day, sometimes people recognize me from the viral picture and ask me about it. It has become a habit of mine to ignore such people.
Back when I was a kid, I had this friend in elementary school. We were super close, sat next to each other in class, hung out every recess and lunch. So, at one point, we planned a little sleepover. My parents' place was kind of small at the time, but she lived in this big old house with her grandparents. So it was arranged we'd have our sleepover there instead. I never found out why she lived with them or where her parents were, but I distinctly remember my mom and dad telling me not to ask her questions about them for obvious reasons in hindsight. The only thing was, my friend seemed really set on having the sleepover at my place. I mean, to the point where, when we had no choice but to have it at her grandparents' place, she seemed to not want to have a sleepover anymore. I had to convince her to have it at her place just because I was so excited about the idea of having the sleepover in general. Anyways, it comes to the night of the sleepover. I go over to her grandparents' place and it's every bit as fun as I imagined. We watched movies up in her room, had pizza delivered, ate ice cream right out of the tub, and her grandparents seemed really sweet and nice. Then I think it was around 9 p.m. Her grandpa knocks on the door, pokes his head in and tells us that he and my friend's grandma are headed to bed, so we're to keep the noise down. We're like, okay, good night. He leaves, and we carry on with our night. A little while after, I get up and head over to the door, telling my friend I needed to use the bathroom. She jumps up, throws herself between me and the door, and is like, "You can't go out there. you'll wake up Grandpa." I tell her not to worry and that I'd creep down the hall on tippy toes so as not to wake him, but my friend still refuses to let me leave the room. I think she's actually playing around for a second. I'm like, "Quit it," and try to get past her, but she actually shoves me back away from the door with this angry look on her face. I didn't want to start a fight with her after all. The whole objective was to keep as quiet as possible, but still I needed to use the bathroom. So I asked her where I'm going to go, and get this. She reaches under her bed and pulls out one of the plastic stationery trays. You know, like the inbox and outbox kind you put paper in? Yeah, that kind. She points at this paper tray and is just like, "Go in this." Again, I think she might be playing a weird and cruel sort of trick on me, but she's deadly serious. She actually wanted me to pee in that stationery tray. So I did. It was super gross, but I did it, and instantly, the mood is just destroyed. I had nothing to clean myself up with. I'm pretty sure I peed a little on my nightgown. It was just all kinds of disgusting. But still, my friend won't let me go to use the bathroom to wash up. The weirdest thing was, she acted like it was normal. She never did anything like that at my house, and she definitely didn't seem like that kind of kid, like she wasn't known as the stinky kid in school or whatever. The whole thing just kind of blew my mind, and although I didn't let it affect our relationship or friendship or anything, I definitely didn't like to stay over at her house again. We stayed close for a long time after, but ended up going to different high schools because she moved in with her aunt over in St. Paul. We kept in touch using MySpace, back when that was still a thing, but I never got to the bottom of her weird nocturnal bathroom habits, not until well after her grandpa passed away. When he died, she seemed to take it really bad. When I called her, she broke down crying so bad that she had to hang up, and she wouldn't return any of my texts, no matter how much I begged her to get in touch. In the end, me and my mom looked up her aunt's home phone number and called ahead before we drove over. The aunt seemed more than happy to talk to us, but with the caveat that she had something very, very serious to tell us. My friend's grandpa had been doing stuff to her. Whenever her grandma was asleep, she got up to use the bathroom or whatever, her grandpa would hear her come out of his room and, God, I can't even bring myself to say it. Turns out he'd done the exact same thing to her mom too, and that's like half the reason she wasn't in the picture anymore. One of the other reasons was the drug use, which is why no matter how much she insisted on custody not being given to the grandparents, a judge ignored her and did it anyway. I think they were just so terrified of him that they just couldn't talk about it, ever, and it was only after he died that it all came spilling out in various forms. The aunt that she was living with was her mom's cousin, so obviously wasn't around for what was happening when they were kids. It was absolutely horrifying hearing about it just as her friend, so I can only imagine how terrible the aunt felt, knowing she was so close to the abuse but just not being able to see it. And then it all made sense to me. Why she didn't want me walking down the hall at night. Why she'd taken to peeing in a stationery tray that she kept hidden under her bed. She wasn't being mean or weird when she made me do it. She was protecting me. No wonder she didn't want me to have the sleepover in her place, and I'm really not trying to make this whole thing about me when I say this, but I feel horribly guilty for not saying anything to my parents at the time. I didn't want to embarrass her. She was my friend, my best friend. But that's just the thing about being a kid, isn't it? That naivety. You do dumb stuff even if you don't mean to. And that's what my therapist tells me anyway, and I try to believe it. I really do. But part of me will forever remain convinced that somehow I'm kind of to blame, too.
Kyle's party's always so lit, isn't it? I said while stretching my arms. Yeah, it was dope. I loved it, and isn't Kyle so handsome? I mean, he looks like the best among other guys in our school. June, who was still a bit tipsy, said, I know, right? It's like he's some kind of Greek mythology character that came out of a comic book. I said while laughing, Kyle was one of the most famous guys in our school, and tonight was his birthday party. He invited us 3 days ago for this, and it's still a surprise for me because he never talks to us like ever. So we had fun at the party, the music was good, there was plenty of booze there, and the boys kept hitting on us, asking for our numbers, which were rare too. I think it's because we had changed a bit since we started working out. Oh, I forgot to introduce June. She's my childhood best friend and also my neighbor. We grew up together, went to the same primary school and middle school, and now going to the same high school as well. On top of that, we were in the same class as well. She's like the sister I never had. Our parents are also good friends, and they love our friendship as well. Anyway, while we were still walking home and passing through a park, we saw a box laying around near a bench. There was no one around in the park, so I figured someone may have forgotten it there. I don't know how and why, I guess it must be the booze talking, but my morality kicked in all of a sudden and I decided to pick it up and submit it to the nearest police station. So I walked there, picked it up, and told June that we should give it into some officer so that if there was anything valuable in there, and whoever has lost it, kept looking for it, and they'd be able to find it. But June had something else in mind. She said we should look at what was inside the box only because she was curious to know. At first I denied, but to be honest, I was curious as well, so I agreed to do it. We opened the box and there was nothing but an old Ouija board inside. I guess someone did not forget it here, but may have left it here instead since it was so old. As I was about to put it back from where I picked it up, June said, "Why don't we play just once before putting it back? You know, I've never played with a Ouija board before. Come on, June. We can buy a new one if we want to play. Let's just leave this dirty old thing back here where we found it," I said while putting it back near the bench. "But why waste money when we can just use this one instead?" June said while picking it back up. "Fine, but you take responsibility if we find out that this board is haunted later," I said while rolling my eyes, and she nodded yes. We continued walking towards the house when she made the entire sleepover plan at our house. Our parents were going on a romantic trip the next day, and she decided to have a sleepover at our house, where we would be playing with the Ouija board. I swear, sometimes I wonder if June is still a middle school student. So the next day, she invited 3 other of our common friends for the sleepover: Maggie, Leah, and Leslie. I was already at our house when the 3 of them got there, and I wasn't surprised to see that June had prepared a bunch of snacks and drinks for us. Okay, so all of us got here. June took us out of the living room and turned out all the lights, only leaving the night bulbs on. And then she took out the Ouija board with a bunch of candles and all. I don't know where she read the instructions for doing all these other useless weird stuff, but okay. If it made her happy, we went along with it. As we started playing the Ouija board, I saw a shadowy figure near the window, which I guess the rest of them saw too. I got frightened by it and went near the window to check it out. There was no one there, so we thought it must be just the wind or something. The weather used to be pretty windy at night around these times, and that's what we thought it would be. Anyway, we went back to playing the game, but as soon as we started it, the shadowy figure was seen again, near the window, and this time along with a banging sound. "I think we should just stop playing the game," Leah whispered in a scared, trembling voice, which the others agreed to. June looked at me, hoping I would oppose them, so I told others that it must be something else, and let's just give the game one last try. They hesitantly agreed to it, and again the moment we started to play the game, the banging got louder. We could see the shadowy figure lurking outside the window. All of us started to scream and ran after June as she leaded us to our room, and then locked it from the inside. As we were hiding inside, I could hear the sound of them breathing heavily, and then the cracking sound as if the window was getting open. I felt as if my heart would burst out of my chest from fear. I looked at June, who was shaking and trembling from fear, so I held her hand, trying to calm her down, and myself as well, in the process. After about an hour or so, we felt a complete silence in the house. No footsteps, no creaking or thumping sounds, nothing. So we decided to check it out. Everyone was too scared to go and check, but still we decided to go together and if there was anything weird or wrong, we would run back to the room. We hesitantly unlocked the door and walked out, slowly walking around the area while trying to make as minimum sound as possible. We were shocked and freaked out at the same time as we reached there. June turned all the lights on to make sure, but it was true. The Ouija board was gone, and the window door was open. I slowly went ahead and closed the door, turned towards the others who were still shaking from fear, and said with a trembling voice, "How about we eat some snacks that June's made, go to sleep, and forget that this ever happened?"
Way back when I was homeless, there was this local homeless shelter I would stop to get food at. And sometimes, if you were lucky enough to get there in time, you could get a bed for the night. Only because of the rough neighborhood it was in. If you walked down there for a bed for the night and couldn't get one, you were basically stuck in one of the worst areas of the city until you could escape it on foot. Other homeless people might try and rob you. Some guy got knifed in front of me one time, and if you tried to bed down there was a good chance some drunk idiot would come along and kick the life out of you just for fun. But by far, the worst I ever saw was while walking out of that area one night when I was using the alley to try not to attract attention. And out of nowhere, I started hearing this weird grunting sound. So I doubled back to check it out. At the back of an abandoned lot, I saw this crazy animal of a man, naked from the waist down, on top of someone who I assumed was a woman thrusting on top of them. Every couple of seconds, he would stop to throw a punch. The woman was unconscious, completely limp, and both her and the guy's fists were covered in blood. I yelled out to him to stop. Then he just turned to look at me. I've seen a lot of really messed up things in my life, but that look in his eyes was beyond animalistic. It was like the lights were on, but no one was home, you know? And the way the orange security light was reflecting off them made him look even more inhuman. I was so scared. I wanted to do something, but all I could bring myself to do was run to the nearest payphone to call the cops. I know that makes me sound like a coward and that I should have stopped the guy because now the girl could be dead for all I know. But I just didn't know what else to do. There could be 2 dead people, and I don't think this way anymore, but for a while, after I thought it might be better to be a dead hero than live like a coward how I feel now. I just hope whoever it was that he was hitting is doing okay these days. Some people never find a way off the streets, but some do, and I hope she was one of those. As for the guy, there's not a punishment in hell too good for him, and I hope he got his karma in the end.
On the morning of Tuesday, September 20th of 1988, 19-year-old Tara Calico left her home in Belen, New Mexico to begin her daily bike ride along the New Mexico State Road. Cycling was her favorite form of exercise, and she chose a route she'd ridden every morning, without fail, for years by that point, and was often accompanied by her mother, Patty Dole. However, in recent weeks, Patty had ceased to join her daughter in her daily rides after one particularly frightening incident in which she believed the pair had been stalked by an angry motorist. Patty had implored her daughter to stop cycling at that time in the morning, or to at least take a different route, but her daughter rejected the idea and said her mother was overreacting when it was suggested that she carry mace. That Tuesday morning, Tara had noticed one of her hamstrings feeling a little tight. She mentioned this to her mother and added that if she wasn't home by 12, it was because she was probably injured, in which case her mother was to drive down the regular route to give her and her bike a ride back. We can also assume that Tara desperately wanted to be back around that time, as she had a date at around 12:30 and wanted time to get ready. And indeed, when Tara failed to return by noon, Patty drove down their usual cycling route, but couldn't locate her daughter. But what she did find were the broken pieces of what was unmistakably Tara's Sony Walkman. Patty immediately contacted the police, suggesting the broken pieces might represent some kind of trail for them to follow. Police did indeed follow the trail of broken plastic, but to no avail. Several witnesses were interviewed, each saying they had seen Tara riding her bike along the state road. One or two even added that they had noticed a light-colored pickup truck following closely behind her, but hadn't really thought anything of it at the time. Police cast a wide net in the search that followed, but not a single trace of Tara or her bicycle could be found. It was as if though she'd ridden into a black hole, like she just dropped off the face of the earth. Yet little did they know, they would be seeing Tara again. Only the circumstances in which they'd see her would be truly terrifying. On the evening of June 15th, 1989, a woman in Port St. Joe, Florida, stopped at a local convenience store. She pulled into a free parking space next to a large white windowless Toyota cargo van, and as she got out, noted that it was being driven by a mustachioed Caucasian man who appeared to be in his 30s. She then walked into the store, picked up a few choice items, then headed back out to her vehicle. The Toyota cargo van was gone, but lying in the empty parking spot was a small square Polaroid photograph. At first glance, the picture appeared to be of two people lying among some bedding, but on further inspection, the contents of the photograph made the woman's blood run cold. It showed a young boy of maybe only 7 or 8, along with a young woman in her late teens. Each appeared to have their wrists bound behind their backs with a strip of duct tape covering each of their mouths. She immediately contacted local law enforcement, who in turn set up roadblocks to intercept the vehicle. But the van was never found, and the driver never identified. Representatives from the Polaroid company offered to analyze the picture before informing police that the picture could have been taken no earlier than May of 1989, as the kind of material used to print the photo was not available until then. The Polaroid's discovery sparked a frenzy of interest in the national media, and Patty Dole was contacted by friends who believed the gagged girl looked an awful lot like Tara. The FBI then brought the photograph to Patty, who was then on convinced that the girl in the picture was her missing daughter. She cited the scar on the bound girl's leg, one that was identical to one Tara had received as a result of a car accident. Patty also noticed that a paperback copy of V.C. Andrews' novel My Sweet Adrena can be seen lying next to the girl, a book that just so happened to be Tara's all-time favorite. The United Kingdom's Scotland Yard analyzed the photo and conclusively agreed that the woman in the picture was indeed Tara, but a follow-up analysis by the Los Alamos National Laboratory disagreed, citing differences in the girl's facial structure. However, when the FBI conducted a third analysis of the photo, the results were inconclusive. They were 75% sure it was her, just enough to officially declare it, as it might muddy or misdirect any potential investigation. The other young person in the picture was thought to be young Michael Henley, also of New Mexico, who had disappeared just a few months before Tara had. Michael's mother said that she too was almost certain that it was her young son tied up in the Polaroid, yet this is considered highly unlikely as Michael's remains were discovered in June 1990 in the Zuni Mountains, less than 10 miles from the family's campsite he vanished from. Police believe that Michael simply wandered off and subsequently died of exposure, and if that were the case, there was no way the child in the van could be him. 2 other possible Polaroid photographs of Tara had surfaced in the years since her disappearance, the first being discovered near a construction site in the small town of Montecito, California. It is a blurry photo of a girl's face, with tape covering her mouth and light blue striped fabric behind her. Many have noted the blatant similarities between the fabric to that on the pillow in the Toyota van photo. It was taken on film that was not available until June 1989. The second Polaroid depicts a woman loosely bound in gauze. Her eyes are covered with yet more gauze and large black frame glasses, and she's standing with a male passenger beside her on an abandoned Amtrak train. The film used was not available until February 1990. Calico's mother believed the first was definitely Tara, with her sister saying that the two girls had a striking, uncalming resemblance. As for me, I will not rule them out, but keep in mind our family has had to identify many other photographs, and all but those three were ruled out. Many years went by without any arrests or developments in the case. Then, in 2008, rumors spread that two teenage boys had accidentally hit Calico with a truck, panicked, and subsequently killed her, covering up their misdeeds by disposing of her corpse somewhere it'd never be found. But this was dismissed as pure hearsay, and the police officer who made the comment was publicly chastised by Tara's stepfather for them. 5 more years went by, and we could be forgiven for thinking that Tara's case would remain a cold one. But in 2013, the FBI announced that they had set up a 6-person task force that was to be charged with reinvestigating Tara's abduction, citing the discovery of new evidence. Then in 2019, the FBI followed up their announcement by offering a reward of up to $20,000 for precise details leading to the identification or location of Tara Lee Calico, and information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for her disappearance. So it seems the FBI are creeping ever closer to finding the person responsible for Tara's death or abduction, and that even if 30 years goes by, the powers that be will not simply allow people to go missing without doing something about it. But the question remains, was it really a freak car accident that killed Tara? One in which a terrified teen found he couldn't face the consequences? Or was Tara kidnapped by someone with much more nefarious intentions? Someone who wanted to show off his monstrous labors by displaying his quarry, bound and gagged, his playthings until he saw fit to dispose of them. But at the end of the day, we're only left to wonder in horror at Tara's fate at the hands of her captor, left only to pray that the same thing doesn't happen to us or any of our loved ones.
Last year, after a blissful first year of living in a new apartment, all on my own for the first time, a man moved in next door that I will never forget. The layout of the apartment is crucial to understand this incident, so I made a little diagram floor plan taken from the closest thing I could find online and edited. The most important part is that my balcony and his balcony are only partially separated by a wall, and there is a solid 2-foot gap in which you can easily walk from one to the other. For context, I previously had a very lonely woman living next door for the entire first year I lived there, who never crossed this balcony threshold without being explicitly invited. I only throw this in there so you can understand I wasn't previously concerned about someone infiltrating my space. The first time I met this new neighbor, and he was unloading groceries from his massive truck into the assigned parking spot next to mine. As I was driving up, he and a girl I assumed to be his girlfriend were unloading boxes from Costco. I noticed them speaking, and as soon as I was out of the car, they went silent. I nodded to them, proceeded to the elevator, and the guy ran up behind me, threw some boxes down, and begged me to wait. No problem, I'm a good neighbor. While in the elevator, the girlfriend refuses to make eye contact or speak to me. A little weird, but I just thought she was shy. But he quickly introduced himself and was extremely chatty. In the 45 seconds it takes to get the floor where our apartments are, he asked how I liked the place, where I was from, and where I worked. Looking back, his enthusiasm was a little strange, but I chalked it up to him being excited to be in a new place. For the sake of the rest of this story, we'll call him Sam. Sam was maybe 33, 6 foot tall, with a slim, muscular build, and had hair bust extremely short, as if the mask is balding. Pretty average looking by all accounts. The first few weeks we run into each other often and always make small talk and always refers to me as Miss. I assume it's because he forgot my name but wanted to be polite. I almost never see his girlfriend after the first night, but occasionally I can hear him talking to a lady in his apartment as the walls are reasonably thin. One night, about 3 months after Sam moved in, my boyfriend is spending the nights and we were watching movies on the couch. It's maybe 11:30 p.m. The back of the couch is against the wall I share with Sam, and we hear some banging noise. My first thought is that him and his girlfriend must be getting it on. Boyfriend and I laugh and turn the volume up a bit to drown them out. Then in addition to the banging, the neighbors begin to scream. We can hear objects being thrown, glass shattering. The words are muffled, but there's distinctively anger and crying going on. My boyfriend, Jim that he is, steps onto the semi-shared balcony and in his loudest voice, heels over without crossing on the Sands balcony. "Everything okay in there?" The girl opens the sliding door on Sam, sight a minute or two later, and says sorry about that. So we leave it alone. I'm concerned, but we have no idea what actually happened and decide to go to bed. Big mistake, I know. I wake up around 3 a.m. to more screaming, but my boyfriend refuses to wake up, and I'm not about to take my 5-foot self to break up whatever is going on at 3 a.m. I considered calling the police, but was so drowsy, I convinced myself I dreamed it. I deeply regret that decision. The next morning, I woke up to some terrible personal news, an entirely unrelated death of a friend, and pretty much put the events of that night on the back burner. I didn't forget, but it also wasn't on my mind. Fast forward about 2 weeks. It's a warm day, and I'm outside reading a book in a robe, bra, and shorts. I'm going to chair the faces away from Sam's apartment, so I can't see his side from where I am. I'm deep in my book, when suddenly I get a tap on the shoulder. Sam is standing behind me and asked if we can talk for a second. This man has already crossed an albeit invisible line by coming on my side of the balcony, but I also can't get to my door without physically moving him aside. So I asked him what's going on. He told me it was his birthday and asked if I knew where to get some Mary Jane because I seem like a girl who knows how to have a good time as we live in a state where that stuff is legal. I told him that I'm sure Google would provide the best dispensary in the area, but I personally didn't have any. He proceeds to tell me how drunk he got last night, and at this point, I'm itching for an exit. As I start to move as if to signal I'm done talking, he reaches out from my shoulder and tells me he hit and scratched my car last night because he was driving very, very wasted. Remember his massive truck? He says all of this with a smile on his face, almost laughing. I'm surprised, but mostly when I get away from him because my creep senses are starting to tingle, and I don't want to blow up at him for hitting my car. He says he'll send me his insurance info if I give him my number, and thankfully, I knew that would be a bad call. I made a bad, nervous joke about knowing where he lived and said if the damage was bad enough, I would knock on his door to get his insurance. He counters by saying he will leave a note with his info on my door. He retreats from the balcony while also saying he'd prefer to just pay me cash and not involve insurance. I give it an hour or so, and then I head down to assess the damage. I did this because I didn't want to walk down at the same time as him and risk having him follow me. Sure enough, there are 2 long new scratches on the driver's door and knock deep, just kind of superficial or worthy of a call to insurance immediately. I really just didn't want to get involved with him in any way, so I decided I could deal with the scratches. But this little event has kind of shaken me. At this point, I knew something was off with him. Nothing unusual happens as far as I'm aware this night. The next day is Saturday, and as I had to work the next day, I'm home alone, watching some action, a movie, and it's around 11 p.m. I'm on the sofa with my cat curled up on me, and the movie is relatively loud, so it takes me a little while to register this banging noise coming from the hallway of my apartment building. I honestly only noticed because my cat had woken up and got all puffed up and freaked out. I turned down the volume of the film, and suddenly, The banging is getting louder and louder. And just as I stand up, I hear the 5 words no one wants to hear coming from their door. Open up. It's the police. My stomach dropped to the floor. I had lied to Sam the day before. I totally did have some ganja on me, and I had smoked a joint outside on the balcony, the part furthest away from Sam's maybe 20 minutes before. I'm totally panicked, high as a kite, and trying to control my breathing so I don't immediately come off as suspicious before I answer the door. I remember checking the people to see a close-up of a cop's face, and then open the door, coming face to face with 6 officers, all with guns drawn. I'm about 0.5 seconds away from completely peeing my pants in fear, still convinced I'm somehow in trouble for smoking a joint. The officer who seems to be in charge can sense instantly the level of panic, and he says, "Ma'am, you're not in trouble. We need to speak with you about your neighbor. Can we come in?" At this point, I'm reeling, and my whole being is tense. I let the cops in, but my heart hasn't moved from my throat. The policeman in charge asked me about any interactions with Sam. I told them I barely know him, that he just lives next door, moved in a few months ago. I asked why they needed to be in my apartment. I'm scared, but also I don't typically get along with cops, and I have the right to know why 6 of them practically waved their guns in my face. The lead officer proceeds to tell me that Sam was a bad guy. He apparently beat his girlfriend so bad the night prior that she's now in the ICU for her injuries. They also told me Sam had a gun and had barricaded himself in the apartment next to mine. They said they had spoken to my building manager and knew my place had access to his balcony, and they needed to use it. Then they asked me to go into the bedroom and lock the doors and turn the lights off. The next 30 to 45 minutes were complete torture. In my panic, I left my cell phone on the kitchen counter and had to sit in my room, just listening to the commotion. No shots were ever fired, but there was a lot of yelling and what sounded like things being thrown. Eventually, after what felt like a lifetime, the main officer knocked on my door and told me that Sam had been arrested and thanked me for letting them use my apartment. They asked me questions for maybe 15 more minutes and left. I wish this is where the story ended. There's a bit more. In the days following Sam's arrest, I became even more panicked about him coming back to the apartment building, worried about retaliation. I hadn't said anything to the police to technically incriminate him. I had proof of nothing except his word that he was the one who scratched my car, but I did tell them about the night my boyfriend and I heard them fight. About 5 days later, Sam reappeared at the building as I was coming home from work one evening. He tried to approach me, but the elevator shut just as he was running to catch it. My whole body got tense, like the feeling when you come this close to getting in a car accident but narrowly avoid it. I stayed off my balcony entirely from this point and always kept the curtains closed. We didn't speak or rarely see each other at all for another few weeks, and then had our final interaction. Sam stopped me in the parking lot one night, running after me as I was about to get on the elevator. He begged me to tell him why I let the cops in that night. I told him the honest truth, but I was stoned, didn't know what to do, and had a bad history with cops. This is all true, and again, I was concerned about him trying to retaliate. He then got pretty upset and kept trying to repeat the question, obviously wanting a different answer. When I couldn't give him one, he then offered me $3,000 to testify as a character witness on his behalf. Because I knew him and knew how he really treated women, I was speechless and very freaked out. He told me his hearing was the next Thursday morning, and he asked if I could show up. I was like a deer frozen in headlights for a moment, and then somehow got out of there after mumbling a string of words that were most likely incoherent. The Wednesday night before his trial, I came home from work and my cat was acting kind of weird, like something had just booked her and her tail was all puffed out. I kinda shook it off, but I noticed through the curtains that there was something taped to the outside of my sliding glass door. Apparently, Sam had left a post-it with his phone number and name, and underneath, "I'm counting on you." Needless to say, I never showed up. I took a photo of the post, had grabbed my cat, locked all of my doors, and stayed at my mom's house for about 5 days after that happened. I did phone the police to let them know he had been on my balcony again, but they never followed up with anything. Eventually, my boyfriend came and went back to my place together. Everything was as it should have been. I never saw Sam again. But a few weeks later, a lady that I'd never seen before was cleaning out his apartment. Maybe a month after that, new people moved in, and things have been normal ever since. I tried calling the police in the county jail to see if he was in lockup again, but no one was able to release information to me. I'm hoping that means he's there. If he did what the police said he did. So to Sam, I will say I'm not really sure what happened. But my biggest regret is not calling the police when I felt like I should have. And my gut and I hope to God I never see you when you get out.